Inravio.com.
Hello again, everybody. This is Joe Larson, and you're watching the 5 on Racing Show live from New York. Welcome. A quiet week, kind of, sort of, maybe. Racing, it's that time of year where there's either a lot happening or not a lot happening, but we'll be talking about some stuff. The Camping World Truck Series race, John West Townsley and Spencer Gallagher going at it. And I'll tell you what, that was a poor excuse for a fight if you saw it. They were just rolling around the ground like the WWF or the WWE. It was very interesting, and we'll talk about that later on when we get to that part of the show. We're going to talk about another loss in the NASCAR world. We'll talk about that in the second half. Then we got the Cup results from Sonoma, California. And, of course, the truck results coming out of, Illinois. So Gateway. So hope everybody had a good week. The NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour was on Long Island this weekend. We'll talk about that. And the Long Island contingent, a solid finish by many of the Long Island teams, and that's going to be interesting. And Tony Stewart breaking an 84 race win streak. He hasn't won a race in 84 events, taking down the win over there. We'll talk about that as well. So anyway, hope everybody had a good week. The weather here in the Northeast has been very good. Racing hasn't been rained out in quite some time, and there's a lot of stuff going on. So those in the chat room, welcome. If you have anything you want to talk about, feel free. And also, we did our closing credits. We made some changes in our closing credits to recognize those who have been, and I'm going to say a partner to the 505 on Racing Show, whether they came down and from upstate New York or out east on Long Island or wherever they may have come from, guys who have contributed to the show. So hang around and catch the credits at the end. You'll see a new credit ending, I guess you could say. Just like, in the movies, Years ago in the movies, it's funny, the credits were in the beginning. It would say starring this guy, starring that girl, introducing this person, and all the credits were in the beginning, and it was a movie. I don't remember the name of the movie, but the movie, when it ended, it said a good cast is worth repeating, and they put the credits at the end to thank all of those and give credit to the stars and the behind-the-scenes people. But we'll get it good. And I want to thank Kyle Melnick for putting that together for me. Poor guy. This guy does a lot for all the shows here at Inravio, and I come up with some things sometimes I ask him to do, and sometimes I'll get that look like, but it's done, and anytime you work with a guy like that, it's aces, and sometimes I could be here in a minute to air, and I'll say, can you, and I get that look, but all of a sudden it shows up. So my hat's off to Kyle, because I don't think he gave himself credit in our credits, because he doesn't like that. He's a private guy, So I thank him personally. But anyway, Camping World Truck Series, John West Townsley and Spencer Gallagher, they went at it after a Gateway Motorsports Park truck race after they beat and banged each other for a little while. If you saw it, it looked like they were starting to just talk, and one guy just punched him, and then he had him in a headlock, and he kept hitting him, and then they just rolled. They rolled a good 20 feet on the pavement. And what surprised me is the safety crews and NASCAR officials were at the trucks making sure everybody was all right. Now, there's a couple of violations here. They got out of their vehicles, and then they're rolling around on the pavement. And, one of them just stood there and took the hits, and the other guy just kept throwing punches. But they weren't like hard punches. It was more about, I guess, effect. I don't know. But Steve O'Donnell, Vice President and Chief Racing Officer, says that repercussions are likely. They're going to get banged for fighting. They're going to get banged for getting out of their race vehicles on the racetrack and not going immediately to the ambulance or the safety crew. And you're probably looking at suspensions. Now, suspensions aren't handed out in this incident I don't know when they will be. I know sponsors are involved, and a lot of times sponsors, hey, listen, you suspend my guy, I'm pulling my deal. And NASCAR doesn't want to lose a good, solid, sponsor. And they don't want these race vehicles, whether it's cars or trucks or whatever, at any level, to lose a sponsor. Because without the sponsors, you don't have a show. So, maybe there won't be a suspension, but the precedent then is going to be set yet again that a penalty that deserved the suspension didn't come forward. And there's going to be points involved. They're going to decide tomorrow, Tuesday, there's going to be points taken away, driver points, owner points, and of course you're on probation until December 31st, 2016, which to me, I'll tell you what, I've seen guys in every level get put on probation, and what does probation mean? In the real world, you violate your probation, because you just got out of jail or you're paroled or whatever, and you're on probation, you have to be a model citizen, and you break that rule, you're back in. You're back in wherever it might be, whatever jail it might be that you came from. But in NASCAR, you put on probation, and let's say this week you got put on probation because, you wrecked somebody on purpose. Now you're on probation, you got a fine, you lost points, and then the following week you get caught bending the rules, and you get another fine, dock more points, and you put on probation for that. Wait a minute, you're already on probation. But in the NASCAR world, you have to do the same thing twice. At least that's what I'm saying. And you have to and do the same thing twice before you could be suspended. Because, they don't make too many people sit out. And there's only been a couple over the last couple of years. And, the weekly series, it's a little bit different in the weekly series. And I know, back when I was involved with the weekly series, the promoters and the owners of the restaurant didn't want people suspended. They didn't want them hit with heavy fines that would keep them out. And there was nothing you could do sometimes. And these guys knew that. They could go, before they got that call from Jerry Cook or Joe Scott Nicky, the former assistant competition director at NASCAR at the time, before they even would call those guys, they would call the owners and the promoters. And well, I'm pulling my sponsor and I'll never be back. And I wish I had a nickel for every driver that said they wouldn't be back, because I'd be a rich person. But they come back. They're the first guys in line. But anyway, what happens with these suspensions and these racetracks, they tie the hands of the officials on the weekly level, and they don't let them do their job. And the guy knows, hey, I'll just go complain to the owners, and they'll let me back in. And, sometimes you can't do that. And, sometimes I would just do it, and then I get the call from them. Why did you do that? We're talking to them. You need to talk to us before you do that. No, you're paying me to do a job. Let me do my job. And sometimes that doesn't happen on any level. And I can remember, calling up, and I would always say, I would start the conversation with, hey, I had a driver that did this, that, and the other thing, and based on past practice, it was a $100 fine a week off. And he'd say, who is it? And I would always come back, does it matter who it is? And they would come back and say, yes, it does. So that's tying my hand. And there's an incident I'm going to talk about before we go into this other stuff. There's an incident that occurred at Riverhead Raceway some 15, 16 years ago. And a car owner was suspended for 2 weeks by NASCAR. I only wanted to give him one. NASCAR made it 2, and fined $500. I only wanted to fine him 2, but NASCAR said 5. And it's all good. The following week, this individual shows up at the racetrack. He goes into the sign-in window. He signs in, gets a pit pass, walks through the gate. And I'm like, what's going on? So I went over to the registrar. I says, so-and-so suspended, and he hasn't paid his fine yet. And she just, threw her arms up. I was told sign him in. By who? Well, he's told me that, if I don't come here, I'll block the gates. Nobody will race. I don't have time for this. So in he goes. So I got to go walk up to him and nonchalantly, and I just say, listen, what's the deal here? You're putting my people in a bad spot. You were suspended. You were fined. What can we do? And he said, so-and-so, one of the principals of the facility, owes me XYZ dollars. Tell them to pay my fine, and I'll take it over what they owe me. So I'm like fit to be tied. I go into the owners, and I tell them what transpired. And they look at each other, and then they look at me, they look at each other, they look at me again, and they said, how much was that fine for? And I told them, and they handed me the money. And I'll go give this to the registrar, and it'll cover his fine, and just make sure that we both get a receipt, him, the person, and them. And I just walked out and I shook my head. And don't think this doesn't happen in the top levels as well. Think about it. Think if Jimmy Johnson, let's say, did something wrong. Any of the Hendrick drivers did something that would mean a suspension. It wouldn't happen. Rick Hendrick has a lot of juice. Rick Hendrick got the chase changed for Jeff Gordon a couple of years back when Jeff didn't make the chase, and Rick Hendrick and DuPont went to Brian France and said, if Jeff Gordon isn't in the chase, we're not racing next year, and DuPont's going to pull their deal. And NASCAR gave into that. So it doesn't just happen on the weekly level. It happens on the top levels as well. And you know, being an official in NASCAR, and I would think any other sport that involves a lot of sponsorship, it's tough to do your job properly. I can remember talking to the owners one time and saying, I need to see the ledger sheet of who sponsors what and how much they give, and put it in dollar order so I know who's untouchable and who I could go on. See, they only went after the little guys. See, the little guys, you know, guys that, you know, he's not bringing nothing to the table, so we can afford to lose that driver. You know, because somebody else will drive his car, somebody might even buy his car. So those are the things that goes on. So anyway, but hello to everybody in the chat room, and Kevin Basic, Long on Need for Speed, is asking, wants to know where his name is. It'll be on the end with the closing credits like we talked about in the beginning, so we'll take good care of that for you. And we'll have some fun with that. Anyway, what else was going on? Lisa France Kennedy and Danica Patrick have been named to the inaugural list of the 30 most powerful women in sports by Adweek magazine. Kennedy is the CEO of International Speedway Corp and vice chairperson of NASCAR, and the daughter of Bill France and sister of Brian France. Patrick is in her 4th season at Stewart-Haas Racing, driving the number 10 and in the Sprint Cup Series. So most powerful women in sports. Now, that's big. That is big. And some of the other sports people that were named, you know, were tennis players and volleyball players and track stars and whatnot. And, you know, Fortune magazine had named Lisa France Kennedy one of the top 50 entrepreneurs, I think it was last year. Now, you know, a magazine, they do that, they make their list, and this is an honor, and I'll tell you what, think about it. You know, people say, oh, what's the big deal? It's only a magazine, who reads it? Never heard of it. I heard of it, you know, but think about it. Let's say that was you, or your spouse, or your daughter, or your sister, and they got that. You'd be pretty proud of that. So, you know, give credit where credit's due, you know. It's an honor. How many women are in sports in America? Hundreds of thousands. And to be narrowed to the 30 most powerful, that says a lot. Now, what does powerful mean? You know, what does that mean, actually? Are they tough? You know, you see them coming down a street corner, you turn the other way? No, that's not what that means. It means they have influence, they have money, they have stature, they could make things happen. A lot of people might say, you know, Danica Patrick, she can't drive a race car. Well, you know what? She's out there and we're not, number one. And number two, she gets sponsorships, she gets endorsements. You know, think about all the endorsements that she's had since she's been in the Sprint Cup Series, and think about this new bakery that just started sponsoring her that nobody, at least on the East Coast, ever heard of. I go down to Dover and they're giving this stuff away. They're giving it fistful. I had fistfuls of this stuff. I still have some in my cabinet. Next thing I know, I'm in my local supermarket and there's a big display for it. That's power. Because NASCAR fans support the products that sponsor NASCAR drivers. NASCAR fans are brand loyal. And to have that, the official this of NASCAR, the official that of NASCAR, it's big. And those companies pay a lot of money to get that distinction, a lot of money. And don't think there's not a return on that, because there definitely is. Anyway, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the NASCAR Wheel and Modify Tour that was here this weekend, this Saturday, at the Long Island's Riverhead Raceway, when we come back.
What's up, guys? We're Scared No Fair, and we're here with Inravio. If they catch you at a show with one of these bracelets, you will win $100.
That's a lot of money.
So get a bracelet.
Do whatever it takes to get that. Hit them up online.
Village Music Shop of Mastic. 1-800-HEY-DUDE. Your full-service store with personalized attention, school band instrument rentals and sales, music instruction on all instruments for all styles and age groups, for guitars, drums, amplifiers, PA systems, and accessories. It's Village Music Shop, 1495 Montauk Highway in Mastic. Call 1-800-HEY-DUDE or go to villagemusicshop.com.
Welcome back. All right, the NASCAR Wheeling Modified Tour was at Long Island's Riverhead Raceway this past weekend. I'll tell you what, I did not attend the event, but people who did said it was a typical Riverhead Raceway tour race. A lot of cautions. It took 207 laps to get a finish. And you know, it's when you look at who shows up for these races, there's a lot of tour regulars that are on the bottom end of the points and the lower dollar teams that don't attend the Riverhead Tour race. And some people would ask why. Tour regulars, you're gonna miss the race. Because Riverhead's it's advertised as a quarter of a mile, and it's truly not. If you get in a car with an odometer in it and you ride the wall on the straightaways and go down to the white line in the corners, and you do 10 laps, or you do 5 laps, it's only gonna register a mile. So that tells me it's a fifth. Now, I guess if you rode all the way around on the wall, the top edge, yeah, I guess that's a quarter mile. Depends on how they measure racetracks. Some racetracks are, when you measure them out, some are measured from the inside line, some are measured from the wall. But if you go around the wall and scrape your Nerf bars all the way around and can measure it, it's a quarter. But if you measure the groove, it's a fifth. But anyway, a lot of teams won't come because they start 28 cars usually, and that's a lot of cars on a track that size. And although the racetrack has gotten 2 grooves back in it, which makes for awesome racing, it's hard to pass in a modified the way they come off the corners. And a lot of equipment gets tore up. A lot of wheels and spindles get ripped off. A lot of bumpers are flattened. A lot of sheet metal is bent up. A lot of guys that do go from the tour bring their older cars or their short track car, their Riverhead Monadnock cars that they bring to that. And it's a tough track to race on. There's no question about it. It's a tough track to race on. The first and second turn, if you look at the racetrack from right above, the first and second turn is not symmetrical to the third and fourth turn. Third and fourth turn are a little bit wider and a little, in all aspects, lane-wise, width, and also the apex of the turn is a little wider. You go into the other end, it's almost egg-shaped, almost. If you measure it, it's off by a little bit. And if you don't believe me, check it out, because I checked it out. But anyway, a lot of cars get wrecked, and a lot of people. That used to be one of the best paying races on the tour, considering the number of miles it went. And when you see that, when you have that back in the day, it paid more than Stafford, it paid more than Thompson, and it paid in cash, which was another reason why a lot of guys back then would show up. Once they stopped the big payout and started going to the smaller payout, some of the guys stayed home. I can remember having 60 some odd cars show up for that event, and we started 28. We sent home 34 cars that year. So it's one of those things. But anyway, we're going to go down and finish. Timmy Solomino was the winner, his first tour race win at Riverhead. Justin Bonsignor second. Donnie Lee was third. Jimmy Blue at fourth. Dave Sapienza was fifth, followed by Max Zeckerman sixth. Eric Goodale seventh. Chase Dowling was eighth. Matt Swanson was ninth. And Doug Colby, the pole sitter and point leader, rounded out the top 10. The next event will be in New Hampshire. Now, when you look at that, that finish is the top 10. 5 are Riverhead regulars. What does that tell you? Solomino raced everything there is to race at Riverhead. Knows that place like the back of his hand. Justin Bonsignor, another one. Ran charges, go-karts, modifieds at Riverhead, went to the tour. Donnie Leah, starting a legend car, running the tour now, top 5. Dave Sapienza has the biggest hauler in the series, and he lives the closest to the racetrack. You know, 5th place finish there. And then you have Eric Goodale, one of the 3 Goodale brothers with Jeff Goodale and his other brother, whose name escapes me at the moment, Kevin Goodale. Nice equipment always there. And, you know, these guys have come a long way. I remember Eric Goodale coming to Martinsville. And he came out for practice, and I said, well, what'd you think? And he said, it's just like the video game that he was playing, you know, and that's how he practiced for the event. And he actually had a better starting spot than his brother in that event and ran a good show. So, you know, Eric Goodale, I'll tell you what, he's a force to be reckoned with in that series. And it's not because he has big sponsorship and big sponsorship dollars, because he really doesn't. You know, it looks like he does, but he doesn't. What he has is the desire to win and the desire to do whatever it takes within the boundaries of the rules to win. And he's smart, he's level-headed. I've never seen him where his emotions have taken over and caused him to not race the way he should be. Same thing with Timmy Solomino. Timmy, I'll tell you what, win, lose, or draw, as we used to say when I was racing wrecker or checker, in my cases, wrecker, always walks around with a good attitude, always smiling, always talking to people. Please, thank you. And I'll tell you what, that's a credit to his upbringing. You don't see that a lot anymore. You know, Justin Bonsignor, I've known him since he's a little kid. He was a guest on the Speed Racing Radio Show back in, I think it was 2000 or 2001, when he was a go-kart guy. And won in everything he's raced. Him and his M3 technology deal with Kenny Massa. Guy had a boatload of money, wanted to go modified racing, needed a driver at Charleston, and he got right on the tour. So when you see stuff like that, I kind of look back and I say, I remember when these guys started out. I remember a conversation I had with Ken Massa talking about the tour at a go-kart race one day. We're just sitting there talking, and we had a good time with that. And I talked to him about how expensive it was going to be, and he didn't care. He says, I just want to go have some fun. And in the beginning, maybe it wasn't as fun as he thought, but he's having fun now. So, like I said, the next event for the NASCAR Wheeling Modified Tour will be at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway, where they go 100 laps on the mile there at New Hampshire. So we'll be looking forward to that. The NASCAR Wheeling Southern Modified Tour will be in Caraway this weekend after a long hiatus. Again, they don't want to compete with Bowman Gray, and that should be a good event as well. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll have a report from the Bethel Motor Speedway and some other stuff when we come back.
Inravio.com wants you. Inravio provides the best in TV, film, post-production, and so much more. And we're growing. Right now, we're looking for a team of pros that can join us. So what are you waiting for? We need show hosts, production crew, marketing gurus, sales experts, audio engineers, lighting, visual effects, and camera crews. We want you. Go to Inravio.com/join the team.
Hey, I'm Raul Panther.
And I'm Commander B. Hawkins.
And I'm Russ Weller. We're some of the proto men. If we see you without this bracelet, and you're punching the. But if you have this bracelet from Inravio.com, you can win $100.
Put one of these on, or else.
For over 60 years, Hanson Carpet has put the customer first, providing only the finest quality products and service. And Hanson Carpet is so much more than just carpet. We also carry a wide selection of window blinds and shades, and our licensed and insured technicians can service any of your flooring or window covering needs. Browse our huge selection of laminate, carpet, linoleum, vinyl, and tile. Stop by our showroom today or visit HansonCarpet.com. No matter what your project, Hanson Carpet has got you covered.
Hey, this is Chris West Jake, and if Inravio.com spots you at an event wearing this bracelet, they will give you $100.
Welcome back. I'm here. I hope you're here. Anyway, we'll come back with Bethel Motor Speedway ran this weekend. We have results from Bethel coming up on the screen. Bethel Motor Speedway, upstate New York. And well, thank you to Tracy Chirico for providing us with the results and being a partner. The Long Island show, the 505 on Racing Show. So the modified results went like this. The winner was John Cope in the modifieds, followed by Skip LaPolte, Joe DeGracia in third, Steve Galgano in fourth, and Robbie Kanakowski in the fifth place spot. In the 358 Sportsman, we had Paul Martin was the winner with Mike Dutka second, Dan Doolin third, Kyle Redner fourth, Rick Mill rounding out the top five. In the Pro Stock results, we have Mac Crossan the winner with Ed Butler second, Kenny Atkins third, Eric Moon fourth, and Jim Helt following out the top five. In the four-cylinder advanced, we had Mike Travis the winner there with Brian Bauernfeind second, Tim Curry third, Joe Smith fourth, and Jerry Kingler rounding out the top five. In the Bandoleros, we had Tyler Duschenhausen was the winner there. Isabella Machia was second, Eugene Drew third, Jeff Dara fourth, and Mike Roth fifth. The ledger results went like this. Teddy Hodgkin was the winner with Richie Coy second, Joseph Graff third, Drew Voltage fourth, and Stephen Hershey was in the fifth place spot. Street stock results, Amber Van Orden first, followed by Gary Van Orden. Third place was Kyle Welch. Fourth place was Walt Henry. Fifth was Steve Smalley. That's it from Bethel Motor Speedway, and a big thank you again to Tracy Chirico for providing us with those results and for being a part of our show and partnering up with us in the racing community. And if you're ever up that way, and I'll tell you what, it's not that far from Long Island, Pennsylvania, Connecticut. If you could have a couple hours that you want to drive, go over there, please. They put on a good show. It's a good family atmosphere. They have a non-drinking section. They have a kids section. It's just a nice place to watch a race from. The place continues to grow and get better and better with each and every season. And I think a big reason for that is Tracy's efforts. Tracy, former car owner, I guess, when her husband Chris was driving Blunderbuss here on Long Island. Also was a part of my pit crew for my daughter Jessica. She drove truck enduros. She rode for the Long Island Jam. Done stuff for the area auto racing news. And then she went up there and became the business operations manager. And, you know, here's a person that loves racing, works hard at it, and the rewards are happening. You know, it's not easy to run a racetrack. Everybody thinks, you know, think about your experience going to race. You get to the racetrack, whether you get there the first thing in the morning, mid-afternoon, right before the races start, what you see is the gates are open, cars are in the pits, people are walking around doing their job. There's more to running a racetrack than putting the key in the fence and opening the gates. There's a lot. There's advertising, there's rules, there's sanction fees, there's insurance. There's putting a staff together that knows what they're doing. Sometimes, when you go back in the past, think about the past days, the old days, and maybe not so old. Usually the officials were friends of the head official, friends of the promoter, or somebody the promoter knew who had a guy that, you know, said he raced years ago, or an old retired driver who just wants to keep his finger on the pulse. You know, I remember back in the modified tour days when I was official, and this young guy came in. He couldn't have been any more than 19 years old. And, you know, and I could be a pain in the butt sometimes. And I always, you know, the late, great Walt Edsel, we were interviewing people for an official position. And I wanted to hire this guy because he talked the part, he dressed well, he was neat, and all that kind of stuff. And I said, well, I think I like that. Walt goes, no, Skip, no. And I said, why not? He goes, did you see his fingernails? I said, well, I really wasn't paying attention to his fingernails. Well, it says, if there's no grease under his fingernails, what does he know about a race car? And I thought about that for a little bit, and I'm like, maybe the guy cleans up real nice, you know? And I thought about it some more, and I didn't realize what he was saying until 15 years later. I'm on a tour, and this 19-year-old kid comes, and they send him with me to do some tech inspection. So I said, so what did you do before you were a tour official? He goes, oh, I worked at Burger King. And I was like, really? He goes, yeah, I was in the fast food, and you know, and, I like going to the races. Oh, so you like going to races. So what, you know, you work on a car, you drive go-go? No, I just went to the races with my mom and my dad. So I said, so what do you know about these things? Well, no, they're nice to look at, and they go fast and stuff. And I said, really? And he goes, Joe, to tell you the truth, you know, if you put one of these on their roof, I couldn't tell you the back from the front. And I'm not making this up. He became an official because he knew somebody who might have known somebody who thought they met somebody down the road who used to work for NASCAR. And when you look at some of these young guys that are in the sport today wearing the official shirt, and I take nothing away from them because I'm sure they're giving 110% and doing the best job that they can. But where are the higher ups when they're hiring these people? You know, all right, so the guy went to college or he's going to college for an engineering degree, you know, that might help in the R&D center. But you know what? Unless you've built a race car, wrecked a race car, and put a race car back together and raced it again, I don't think you should be one of the guys making rules. I don't think you should be one of the guys enforcing the rules. I don't think you should be one of the guys doing tech. Yeah, tech's a lot different than it was years and years ago in the top 3 levels with templates and lasers and all that kind of stuff. But some of these guys, you know, in the lower series, and I say the lower, the touring series, we'll say the K&N Pro series, the modified series. When you look at those some of those guys don't even know how to use a ruler. And that's what we're doing. They don't have lasers, really. They have the lasers to set up scales and stuff. They don't know how to use a wheelbase gauge. They don't know how to use a tread width bar. And then they, you know, one guy has it in the hub and the other guy has it on the outer rim. Oh, you're too long. Well, of course you're too long because you're measuring at an angle, not a straight line. And that's one of the things that irks me when I go to some of these events and I see these things. And I'm not doing a bash thing. I'm not. Please, you know, don't think I am. But you know, think about how hard it is to find good qualified people and to find people who aren't involved with a race team, especially on the weekly racing series. You know, some of the guys that are making decisions own cars that race there, or partners in cars, or, you know, their family is racing. I had that. My family was racing. And a lot of people can say, oh, I'll never forget my first race where I was, you know, calling all the shots, and I heard somebody who was walking in front of me, didn't know I was behind him, and the guy said, let's see the first time, you know, his relative is involved with his, you know, a situation. Let's see what he does. He's going to let it go. Now, I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't let that happen, and it irked me that he said it. So I wasn't going to, you know, I'm not going to turn the guy around and say, hey, yo, dude, what, you know, I'm not that way anymore. But what I did was, something happened on the racetrack close to this family member, and I sent him down for a rough ride. The family member understood what I was doing, and we never even talked about it. And all of a sudden, people in the press were like, wow, you have to do that. But I don't, you know, it's hard to do that. It's hard to do that. And, you know, in one of the great Long Island car owners, Joe Bertuccio, he taught me a lesson one time. He said to me, you know, him and I would go at it some Saturdays. Let me tell you, I mean, go at it. And, you know, to the point where I thought I was going to get a bullet in the back of my head. And not that Joe would do that, but I'm sure if he did too, he knows who to do it, who to call. But anyway, and something happened during the week, and I had to go to him. And I was quite surprised that he helped me to the extent that he did. And I said, Joe, I'm really surprised, and I appreciate it. He goes, why are you surprised? He says, well, you know, we fight every week at the racetrack. And he goes, what happens at the racetrack is the racetrack. What happens Monday to Friday is a friend thing. And it taught me a lesson. And, you know, as long as you're learning these lessons, and when I say about some of these officials who I don't think are ready to be officials, they should be gate people first, or, you know, stand by the tires and mark them, whatever. You need to work your way up, and you need to learn, and you need to read the rule book, and, you know what the rule book says. You shouldn't have to, when a competitor or a car owner or a crew member comes up to you and says, hey, what about blah, 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 blah? You shouldn't pull out your rule book and go and try to find the rule, because first you should know where it is. You should not even have to go, and you should be able to say, the rule is this. You got to read the rule book. You got to understand what the rules are saying. And speaking of a guy who read the rule book, NASCAR racing, especially here in the Northeast, lost another good man. Mario Fiore, longtime NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour champion, team owner, and New England Racing's Hall of Fame member, passed away last week from an undisclosed illness. He was 65. His own success in modifies spanned parts of 3 decades, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, with car number 44. Fiore, a Springfield, Massachusetts native, became a car owner in 1969 at the Riverside Park Speedway in Massachusetts, and he won track championships at the former Riverside Park Speedway in Mass, Stafford Motor Speedway in Connecticut, New Smyrna Speedway in Florida, and Monadnock Speedway in New Hampshire. He was a Tour Modified champion owner in 2000 with driver Jerry Marquis behind the wheel. And some of the names that drove him are a who's who in NASCAR Whelen Modified history. Reggie Ruggiero, the Reg, Mike Stefanik, Rick Fuller, Greg Sachs, just to name a few. Mario Fiore was the type of guy, he didn't take any nonsense from you. The few times he had shown up in the tour while I was still a part of it, he was the type of guy who always had a smile on his face. That picture you see there is how he looked no matter what was going on. You could go to him, you could talk to him, he would teach you, you would learn from him. He would give you advice. Ken Massa, the owner of the Justin Bonsignor Modified, went to this man early in his racing ownership career and talked to Mario Fiore. I don't know what the conversation was or how it went, but Kenny Massa posted on social media that was the best advice he was ever given as a car owner. And not like, Junior Johnson said, the best way to end up with $1 million in racing is to start with $2 million. It wasn't that kind of advice. It was the type of advice that turned that team around and made Justin what he was, Justin Bonsignor. Mario Fiore, 65 years old, will be missed in the garages up and down this East Coast. He wasn't exact as he was back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. He had come back. Him and Reg didn't always get along. It was a love-hate relationship when he drove him, but they were successful. Everybody that drove for Mario Fiore was successful. Mario, you're going to be missed. And it's guys like him that made our tour what it was back when it was. We'll be back.
Village Music Shop of Mastic. 1-800-HEY-DUDE. Your full-service store with personalized attention, school band instrument rentals and sales, music instruction on all instruments for all styles and age groups, for guitars, drums, amplifiers, PA systems, and accessories. It's Village Music Shop. 1495 Montauk Highway in Mastic. Call 1-800-HEY-DUDE or go to villagemusicshop.com.
What's up, guys? We're Scared No Fair, and we're here with Inravio. If they catch you at a show with one of these bracelets, you will win $100.
That's a lot of money.
So get a bracelet.
Do whatever it takes to get that. Hit them up online.
Hey, this is Chris West Jake, and if Inravio.com spots you at an event wearing this bracelet, they will give you $100.
The world of advertising has changed. Radio, TV, and newspaper revenues have declined drastically. Why? Because businesses have realized that advertising return on investment isn't what it used to be. So what can we do about it? Well, that's easy. Advertise online. Own a local restaurant, real estate agency, or even a national retail chain? Whatever your business, Inravio can get your message out there, and we can do it at a fraction of the cost. Call today and see the difference for yourself. This isn't TV. This isn't radio. This is Inravio.com.
Welcome back. The Camping World Truck Series was at the Gateway Motorsports Park. Christopher Bell was the winner with Ben Rhodes, second from the pole. Daniel Hemrick, third. Johnny Sauter, fourth. Eric Zones was fifth. John Hunter Nemechek was sixth. German Kuroga Jr. was seventh. Kaz Graglia was eighth. Ben Kennedy, ninth. And Timothy Peters rounded out the top 10. As I said earlier, the Camping World Truck Series will be at Daytona International Speedway this coming weekend in an event that was always called the Firecracker 400 weekend. Then they ran the race on the 4th of July. Now it's done on the weekend. And I can remember as a kid, going to 4th of July parties and, going into the house and trying to catch it on the local TV. I believe it was ABC would air the race sometimes. And then when it became, CBS was airing it, it was a 4th of July tradition, just like Memorial Day for the Indy 500. And it's just funny how things have changed. And I think it got moved to weekends because of TV. Now, the Cup race, and we're going to talk about Cup race a little bit, the Cup race is going to be run Saturday night. And the reason for that, it gets pretty doggone hot in July in Florida. I mean, so they run it at nighttime, like when they go with the Texas Motor Speedway. It's very hot in Texas. They race that race at night. But as I said earlier, this fighting that went on between John West Townley and Spencer Gallagher, it was, I don't think their intention was to fight. I think what happened was somebody pushed somebody and somebody grabbed on and they fell to the ground and they rolled, like I said, 10 or 15 yards. And, and who had a hold on who. And then there was, a couple of good shots to the head and the one guy, and I don't recall who was who in that because, at that level, they're all young kids to me. And he wasn't fighting back. He was just holding on because of that. He took like 4 or 5 shots to the face. And, they're both going to, like I said earlier, they're both going to be fined. They're going to possible suspensions. They're going to lose a boatload of points. And I'll tell you what, especially the way the points pan out towards the end, you lose 25 points. That's a lot of points. You lose 50 points. It's like you finished first and it didn't count. It's a lot of points to lose. And I'll tell you what, I really feel, and I know I spoke about this at the top of the show, I really feel that NASCAR needs to put their foot down. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of people watching saying, all right, who's going to fight this week? You're going to get a bunch of people that don't normally watch. But you know what? That's not what racing's all about. It's not about, rolling in on the pavement. Just like in February of 1979, the first televised Daytona 500 with the Yarboroughs and Bobby Allison duking it out at the end of the race. The cameras almost missed picking up the winners, who happened to be Richard Petty. The cameras almost missed that because they were glued to the fight. And I guess some guy in the control room finally said, no, get to the camera, whatever it is, get to the start finish line, we got to show the winner. And then he went right back to the fight. And all of a sudden, it was the first race televised live flag to flag, and there was a snowstorm in the Northeast, so everybody was in their house watching. It got big ratings, and because of the fight, the next live televised race, they had big ratings again because people were looking for the fight. True race fans aren't looking for the fight. True race fans aren't looking for the big wrecks. True race fans are looking for good, hard, clean racing. But I'm sure, NASCAR brought him into the hauler after the event and had that little talk with, which probably wasn't pretty. And the competition committee meets on Tuesday, and it's going to probably be announced sometime Tuesday or Wednesday morning what the penalty will be. We'll talk about that on next. We won't be here next week, 4th of July. That'll be July 11th, so it'll be old news by then. But we'll still be talking about it. And when you think about some of these things, and it's hard. And think about this as any sport. Think about whether you're playing hockey, football, baseball, whatever you're playing, and you're working hard, and you're working as hard as you can, and you're trying to make it happen. And you're right there on the edge, your adrenaline's flowing, and you get wrecked. No competitor has ever come to me and said, man, that wreck was my fault. I misjudged. No baseball player, when he gets strike 3, never says, yep, that was a strike. No quarterback who got intercepted and returned for a touchdown said, yeah, I threw it bad. It's always somebody else's fault. The wreck was, that guy wrecked me. That guy pushed me into him. The quarterback, there was no coverage. The coverage was weak. The guy missed it, whatever. Strike 3, the umpire's blind. I umpire. You know how many times people question my strike? I'm right there. I'm over the catcher's shoulder. The pitcher's coming right at me. They're down by third base. Well, what do you mean that's a strike? How did it cut down? The angles and everything. Please, just admit it. Just admit it. They wrecked. They were beating and banging for a couple of laps, absolutely. They were beating and banging, and they wrecked. They shouldn't have been beating and banging. Maybe they were racing hard. Maybe, the guy got into him, tried to push him up, and the guy, oh, you're not pushing me up, I'm going to push you down, and, it's the old tit-for-tat thing, and you both end up wrecked, I wrecked more times than I didn't, and I'll tell you what, I'm going to tell you, it was my fault. My fault, because, the helmet gets a little tight, the adrenaline's flowing, and the testosterone's going, and, that guy ain't passing me, and you give him a little bump, and you take yourself out. Well, you know a guy's a little bit faster than you, but you're trying to hold the line, and you spin yourself out, and you take out 2 or 3 cars. These guys can't get like this. When you're on a professional level, because the only sport that I know that allows fighting is hockey, in which I was watching a documentary on the Philadelphia Flyers, and how they had to change the rules in the late 70s because the Flyers were just beating people up. They were signing guys just to come beat people up. You can't have that. NASCAR needs to come down hard on these guys. They need to set a precedent. Yeah, it was everybody in their feet cheering, yeah, right, go get them. Yeah, they were. But we can't have it in our sport. It's just my opinion, And I was one of those hotheads years ago, and I got in a lot of trouble racing. I still have one of my penalty notices. I have it in my scrapbook, for doing something really stupid. Most other times I was able to talk myself out of it, We'll come across with the right words. And the late, great Walt Edsel, when I was first involved with this sport, we got into a brawl, 2-team brawl, crews, drivers, everybody at ISIS Speedway. And we all got called in one by one into this little office. He's sitting there eating, having a beer, and he was like not a happy camper. And he says to me, he goes, Skip, you're banned from ISIS Speedway for life. I don't care what you have to say. What you did was wrong. You're an embarrassment to the sport. You're embarrassed to promoters. You embarrass yourself. Get out of my office. I don't even know if I want them to sell you a ticket to watch races. Now I'm like 18, 19 years old, and I'm going back to our area, and I'm like, lifetime. That's another 70, 80 years. They're not going to let me go to the races. I got to figure this out. So I go back to his office. I knock on the door, real nice. Now he's on his second, third beer, and he's sitting back. Now, for those who don't remember the late, great Walt Edsel, ever met him, he was a tall guy, 6'6", 6'7". He had hands like a gorilla, and he had this white, intimidating hair, this beard that, he looked like a hitman sometimes. And he sits back and he says, "Kid, I just told you to get out of here." I said, "Well, Mr. Edsel, before I go," and I called him Mr. Edsel, "before I go, I just want to let you know I apologize if I embarrassed you, the owners, promoters, NASCAR, whoever. I apologize. And I understand you have to do what you have to do. And I'm going to take my lifetime banishment like a man and maybe go bowling on Saturdays." All of a sudden, he had like a hamburger now at this point, like on his desk, and a fly was next to it. And he smashed this fly, smashed it to smithereens on his desk, flattened him. And he goes, "All right, Skip, we'll see you next week." I said, I thought I was banned for life. He said, "You were." I didn't say whose life. "You're banned for that life of that fly. His life's over. You're back in. I'll see you next week, Skip." And I tried to be like a model citizen at the racetrack ever since that day. But with the crowd I hung around with, sometimes it was hard. And my Uncle Johnny, rest in peace, and I miss him so much, he got me into this sport we call racing. And in his waning years, he wasn't the best driver at the place, and he didn't have the best equipment. And people always wanted to beat him up. Bobby Mason always went after him. And, and Uncle Johnny was like 5'2", 95 pounds with his boots on. And, sometimes you got to do what you got to do, And, it's hard not to get into it sometimes. But, safer meetings, tearing the place up, all kinds of stuff back in the day. But it's a passion. It's a passion. And, you can't let people push you around. Sometimes you got to go at them. You got to go at them. Anyway, the Xfinity Series was off. They will also be in Daytona this weekend, 4th of July weekend. And the Cup Series was in Sonoma for the road course out in California. And I tried to watch a replay of that race. It's too long. Road course races shouldn't be that long. Maybe I'm thinking that there shouldn't be road course races, especially for the Sprint Cup Series. And I can't even say it was a good race. If you watch the last 10 laps of it, it was a good race, in my opinion. But Tony Stewart was the winner, breaking a drought of 84 winless events with the win. And Tony Stewart, he looked like the Tony Stewart of old in this race. He muscled Denny Hamlin and coming off the last corner for the win as they swapped the lead back and forth, traded some paint. Did he push Denny up hard into the wall and cause Denny to brush it front and rear? You're coming off a corner like that. You're standing on the gas. The flag man's waving the flag. You know what? You would have did the same thing. Anyway, Denny Hamlin was second. Joey Logano was third. Carl Edwards started on the pole, was fourth. Martin Truex Jr. was fifth, followed by Kevin Harvick in sixth. We had Kyle Busch in seventh, Ryan Newman eighth, Casey Kane in eighth, and Kurt Busch rounding out the top 10. They will also be in Daytona. And I always remember Daytona being Richard Petty's birthday, the July 4th race. Now it's going to be, I think, July 2nd, something like that. And, again, you look back in the old days. You look back in the days where you had, David Pearson, Richard Petty, the rivalries that they had together. Earnhardt, Rusty Wallace. That scene in that movie Days of Thunder, starring Tom Cruise, where they got called in by the sanctioning body and they were together and they got reamed out and they better not wreck each other and they better not do this, that, and the other thing. That was real, except that, of course, they changed their names. Did they rent separate rental cars and go racing on the beach, wrecking each other? Maybe not to that extent, but I'm sure they raced back to that restaurant to have lunch. But you think about some of the rivalries back in the day, you know, the Yarboroughs, the Allisons. Man, come on, Bobby Allison, he took no nonsense from nobody. No nonsense. Remember Bobby Allison coming to Long Island to race at Icer Speedway with a car that looked like it just went through the crusher. Got there a day, I was just a kid. I don't even know how I knew about this. But I was just a kid, and I remember his Chevelle, and he went to a local junkyard and got parts and built or rebuilt his race car in the parking lot, like the day before. You know, now there's haulers, there's teams, there's this, there's that. I don't know if some of the kids racing today, if you would have put them in a time machine and sent them back to the 60s, I don't think they would have been able to carry the helmets of some of the guys that raced in this sport back then. Tough men, mean men. They were there to win at any cost, whatever it took. And they loaded up their truck, their trailer, and they started in the south, went up to the north, to Long Island, up to New Hampshire, across the northern part of this country, out to Riverside, California. Actually, they started in Riverside, California, and worked their way back, and then up and down the East Coast. Those are true racers, those are men, those are the heroes of our sport. And I'll tell you what, that's missing today. There's too many crybabies, and I'm saying that. There's too many crybabies. Oh, he hit me, he pushed me. That's racing, big guy. And if you can't take it, you can't be banged around, you can't be pushed. You know, there's no best appearing car at the end of the race. You don't want to wreck people on purpose, but you know what? You want to race hard, you want to race fair, and you got to be tough about it. And I'm telling you that, in my opinion, there's a bunch of crybabies in this sport today. A lot of silver spoon kids who are playing with daddy's money because daddy couldn't make it. Did I say that? Yeah, I did. I said it. Because that's what's happening. If some of these new drivers, young drivers, didn't go through a diversity program, didn't go from the NASCAR Next program, because you don't see any white or blue collar people in that program. You see people with money. You see people with a lot of money. That's all I'm going to say on that subject. Anyway, we got to wrap up again this weekend, the 4th of July. So Monday there will be no show. Celebrate the independence of our country with your family, your friends, and wherever your endeavors are going to bring you this weekend. Please be safe. Please be careful. Give somebody a hug. Tell them you love them. God bless you all. Happy 4th of July. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Good night.